Thank you all for showing up today. We're really happy to have you, and I'm so glad that you were willing to take time out of your day to give us a little bit of your perspective on the evolution of women in optics at the college. So, without further ado, if you wouldn't mind going through, I'm Trent, by the way. I'm involved with Women in Optics, and I'm also a member of the Large Optics Fabrication and Testing Group. And my other moderator, Rebecca, is currently, she has something else she has to do, so she will not be here right now. But if you wouldn't mind going through and introducing yourselves, please, panelists. Can we start with, let's see, Liliana?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Liliana. I was the WiO president in 2018, I believe. I graduated in 2019. And yeah, nice seeing you.
Emily, you want to go?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I was the WiO president 2016 to 2018, and I was the vice president before that and the outreach chair after that. So I've been involved in the leadership from 2015 to 2019, and I'm working at ASML now.
And Kira?
Great. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Kira, and I was the WiO president right after Liliana, so like 2019. And let's see. Yeah, I'm still a PhD student here. I do have to shout out my other two panelists because both of them have had such a big impact on me. Emily is actually, I remember very vividly from recruitment weekend. One of the reasons I ended up coming here, we had a great beer and pizza conversation. So I still remember that very clearly. And then Liliana, of course, was WiO president before me, and I learned so much from her, and I, of course, look up to both of them. So it's an honor to be sitting on this panel with these two rock stars.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. Were you going to say something, Emily?
No, I was just going to say thanks, Kira. I remember that recruitment weekend too. It was great to meet you guys.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, some of you said what year you were WiO president already, but I don't think I heard. Did everyone mention that? I think you all did. Okay, we can skip the first question. You're on top of it. You already guessed what the first question was. But the first question is, what was the highlight of your term as WiO president? So Emily, do you want to answer first?
Sure. For me, I think it's launching your career. So if you're not familiar with launching your career, that was sort of a concept that was around many years ago. I think even Dr. Meredith Kapinski either started it or was involved in that in the very early days. And when one of my first years here, it was just sort of a lunch and learn sort of panel in 821 actually, and just with a handful of women in optics that were in our network. And then in sort of 2015, I think 2016, around there, we sort of revamped the symposium and we made it into a full day event. And then, so I was part of one of those first years, and then it grew since then. So to Liliana and Kira as well. So that was really one of a really great flagship event that we had, and that was one of my favorite things. Also the WiO Weekly, I started the WiO Weekly, and I always love that. So those were my highlights.
Great, Liliana.
Emily, I love the WiO Weeklys. I miss those. Those were such a good blogs. Yeah, I think to continue on what Emily said, launching your career was growing up so much. So I think by the year I joined, we start transferring from WiO to WISE, which is a university. It's organized by the university and other college, not only optical science, which kind of makes sense because a lot of the things we did in launching your career were targeted to STEM students, not just optics students. So that grew up, and that's still going on every year so far. It's launching your career is still going on. So I think that was definitely the best highlight of women in optics. We had other events. I think in my year we have one where Microsoft and Facebook came and give us talks about storage centers, data centers. So that was very interesting. And yeah, I think those were the highlights.
Great, Kara?
Yeah, so launching your career is great. And by the time I became president, it was pretty hands-off for WiO. So WiO was really running it. And it got too successful, I guess. It became so super successful. So I think my highlight would definitely have to be the first Prism week. So my board did the first Prism week in 2020. I think it was the last big college event before everything went online. And that was a really, really cool experience. We kind of had this crazy idea in like November that we wanted to put this on. And Miriam Baker was the president of SOC at the time, and I got to work really closely with her and the SOC board to make Prism Week happen. And you know, did it go perfectly? Were there some things that have been greatly improved upon? Of course, but it was just seeing the student body come together and talk about, you know, the things that make us all human and not just technical stuff, but really celebrate the other things. It was a real highlight, even though I collapsed and slept for like 48 hours afterwards. So.
Yeah, I feel you. Prism Week is a lot of work, and I really want to give a big round of applause to everyone who's been involved this year, especially Clarissa for organizing everything and managing all of us volunteers, because we couldn't do it without you. I wouldn't know where to go if it wasn't for her. So thank you, Clarissa, and everyone else. And I would also just like to state as well that if you're an attendee here online as well, you're welcome to put questions in the chat and we will include them as well. So don't be shy. We do have a pre-prepared list of questions, but just putting that out there. So next question we have is, what did WiO look like when you first became interested in the organization? And some of you have answered little parts of that, but just for everyone to get a say in that as well. So Kira, you want to go first?
Sure. So I knew about women in optics coming into the university, and I definitely wanted to get involved. My first year, I was kind of shy, honestly. I was a little intimidated by all of these senior graduate students who were so cool. So I wasn't active my first year. But then starting my second year, I became social chair, I think, was my position. And I got a little more involved. So WiO was definitely, I guess I wouldn't say the structure has changed that much, but it really did feel like SOC, and that it felt very like safe and collegiate and just a lot of like good conversations and friendship, good vibes, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's kind of a big answer, but it really just like a place where I felt comfortable in the college, which wasn't most other spaces for me.
Gotcha. Thank you. Emily?
Yeah, when I joined, WiO was really pretty small. We had a lot of meetings where there were really just kind of the 5 of us officers or so. So I think before me, their presidents, I think, were Vicky Chan and Christine Bradley and Isela Howlett, if any of you know them. And I think we did a lot of outreach focused projects. So it was more of sort of filling in the gaps that maybe weren't covered by SOC at the time, or just we were doing smaller events and did welcome hikes for some of the new students. And then, yeah, that was sort of when it first started, and we became a lot more active as the years went on, I think.
Great, Miliana?
Yeah, I think when I joined, when I was about to join, Vicky Chan was the president, and I remember she gave us a talk. So that was very important to me, because it meant that there was a representation of female students, which is important because there are very few of us in STEM. And then when I joined, I remember that sunset hike, and it was so good because it gave me a good feeling of the closeness in the college, and it was, I don't know, but I felt welcome and considered, so it was really nice. So that's when I joined, and I think things start changing. I definitely agree with Emily. It was more outreach focused at the first 2 years that I was involved, and later it was more focused on student development and career development. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you very much for that insight as well. And speaking of student development, how do you feel that WiO has helped you emotionally academically or socially? And you've answered some of this already, but specifically those emotionally, academically, or socially, how has WiO helped you? We'll go with Liliana first.
Yeah, definitely having a external group, a support group, it did help. Sometimes sometimes you just need to hear someone else that is struggling with you and say like, oh, I failed this exam, or like I'm struggling in this class, and you hear and sometimes you just say these things, and just sharing those feelings can help you to realize that you are not alone in the journey, because sometimes it can be really alone. Grad school or even undergrad can be a lonely journey, but when you are with other people and you know that they are there with you, you don't feel lonely. So emotionally, it's so important. I cannot emphasize how important it is to have a good engagement with your co-peers and other classmates. I guess socially, it was all fun. I remember the Halloween gets together. That was so fun. And academically, I think more about career development and networking. I met a lot of people there.
Great, thank you. Emily?
Yeah, I really echo a lot of what Liliana has touched on there. I think for me, emotionally, one of the biggest ways that WiO impacted me was in my confidence. So doing a lot of consistent outreach, I became a lot more confident in talking about research or just talking about science. And I'm naturally very introverted, so it was like really beneficial to me to like practice and have a lot of fun doing outreach. Really built up my self-confidence. And I think academically, I wouldn't have made it through prelims without WiO, because I had really close friends that I studied with. Also too, the second time around. So I failed the first time around. And I think, like Liliana was saying, of having that closeness with other people that are going through the same thing and understand the challenges, and really makes you not feel as lonely. So yeah, socially, I continue to be really close with the people that the network of friends that I've made through WiO. Yeah, it's been a really great impact.
Awesome, thank you, Kira.
Yeah, so definitely the networking aspect of it is huge, not just, amongst fellow students, but also, externally, because a lot of industrial partners and even academic partners want to be involved with WiO. So it's definitely a great way to make professional connections. And definitely, I think that served me, professionally. And I guess socially, for me, especially, maybe I can reflect on choosing to be president. It was almost sort of like an act of self-preservation, because I was so frustrated with a lot of things about the college. And I kind of was like, I have to try to make something better, or I'm going to go crazy and drop out. And so it was kind of selfish in a way that I felt like I needed to do it because it was the only way I was going to stay in the program. So that was, a less positive note. Of course, also WiO was wonderful and hanging out with people was great, but I definitely, when it came to president, that was kind of the benefit I got, was that I'm still here, right? I'm going to graduate. And then academically, yeah, I think the resources, having people to ask about, for example, like the prelim exam repository, like where are these resources that I need? It's really helpful to, sometimes you don't want to go to your academic advisor because you're intimidated, but to be able to ask an older graduate student just for advice or information is pretty cool.
Great, thank you. All really great answers. It's been very insightful too, because I've definitely experienced some of the same with my limited involvement with WiO in the past as well. But it's awesome to hear that there's so much help that's being offered within that community. So in that same vein, one thing we asked is, how can WiO improve in helping you or helping other people in our college environment? So we'll go with Emily first.
Yeah, I think I feel like I would want to do this with every answer, with every single question. I just want to shout out just how wonderful the whole RISE initiative is. And every year that I've watched WiO, I've just been so proud that everyone has really made it their own and has continued to grow and do more and more and have such an impact on everything. So that's been huge. I think one thing that I could think of that I think is sort of a natural next step is a lot of strengthening the connection with like the broader optics community. WiO has a lot of great connections with SBIE and Optica and a lot of different networks out there. I think continuing to grow that would be great. I know there's a like LinkedIn group that was started, but continuing those relationships with alums like we're doing now, or having that connection when you go to an SBIE conference, that sort of connection I think is a great thing to continue and build on.
Awesome, thank you. Kira?
Yeah, so I totally echo what Emily says. A lot of the stuff that's happened this year, this WiO board has been just, blowing everything out of the water, being totally amazing. One thing that I think WiO always can improve on is just becoming more and more intersectional. So making sure that we are, trying to be this voice of community in the building and making sure that everyone feels included. And I think with that comes greater participation from more people, because I think we've all heard like, oh, I don't go to women in optics meetings, I'm not a woman. And any gender identity, you're welcome here, right? So I think as we move more in that direction, which has been happening certainly, I think it can always be better, and it's a avenue to growth as well.
Great, Liliana?
Yeah, so obviously WiO has changed so much since I left. Like, I'm sure they are in much better shape. I'll say something that I realized when I joined is, so WiO as an organization is the board and the president and then everybody else involved. But honestly, the president does so much of the work. It feels like a 0.25 full-time job, to be honest. It's so much job, and when you are not on the board, you don't realize that, and you take for granted, oh, WiO exists, but it's honestly one person and another or two more doing the hard work, and sometimes people take it for granted, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it, but it's a lot of work on one or two people. So having a strong board and strong members that are committed is really important. That's one thing. And another thing is also getting enough support from the college is really, really extremely important to make sure that you have the college backing up your efforts and that you're not alone. I mean, when I was there, we're just students, right? But in terms of resources, funding, even mentioning, I think having the support from professors and the college and the dean is extremely important. So again, I don't know how things are now, but I'm hoping that it's getting better every year.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Liliana, because that's actually one thing I wanted to ask the other panelists as well is, how do you feel the college can better support WiO in its efforts to reach a more diverse community? And not only just like the academic programs or the administration, but also like the faculty. What are some ways that the college at large could really help bolster the efforts of WiO, so it's not all just on the board or just on one person to manage all of that? What are some ideas that you might have? So we'll go with Kira first.
Sure. Well, I guess first thing is if faculty would actually engage with WiO like at all, that would be amazing. Like right now, I feel like Meredith is our advisor, Dr. Pinsky, and she's me and Chris's PhD advisor as well. So we have that interfacing, but getting faculty involved has always felt like pulling teeth to me. And they get annoyed when we email them. It's all kinds of things like that where it's just, it doesn't have to be a big commitment, but coming to events and listening every once in a while is so important. And it's really, even this week, I'm still kind of floored by the lack of faculty engagement. So that's something that I think is very easy to fix. That would go a long way. And then I also think, and I think this is improved, anytime, academic programs or, administration in general can elevate and broadcast WiO events, it gives a lot of credibility to them and we get better attendance. So So just by being kind of like a partner with WiO and getting the word out and encouraging people to have these types of conversations is a very easy, simple thing to do that goes along.
Wonderful, thank you. Emily?
Yeah, I think what Kira said was a terrific answer. I think, yeah, getting faculty involved has consistently over many years been really challenging, and it feels like sometimes it's like, oh, it's just like a passion project over there. We're not gonna like we're not gonna really spend money on that. I think there's a lot of different ways the college can improve, but I think one of them would be hiring people specifically to work on like diversity and inclusion and equity and having them be that full-time job. I've talked about this a lot, but I don't know how well received that idea is, but I think it's really important. It's also something you see in industry. There's entire councils for this. So it's not just we're doing great social events or something. It's like it's an active intentional effort by the college to support these initiatives and professional development of underrepresented students. And yeah, a lot of different things come to mind. I think what Kira was saying was terrific. It was a great answer. And yeah, there's lots of different ways, but really giving a validation and making a consistent structure that would be here over the years, because groups of students come and go. But to have like a form, making sure that this is put as something that we need to consistently support over the years would be a great first step.
Yeah, great that you brought that up as well, the possibility of actually employing somebody to do this. That was one of the things that was discussed in the town hall meeting last night, which I think is a great idea. It's been voiced multiple times, and hopefully the administration starts to take that more seriously, because a lot of people clearly are very interested in having that be the case. So at least they heard it a couple times now. So Liliana, do you want to add anything as well?
No, I think Kira and Emily said exactly what needed to be said. Essentially, I think support from administration and from college high level is so important, and having like for instance, simple things like having a regular funding that every year you're gonna get, and you don't depend only on grants, and it takes so much time to get $500, which is nothing for the college, right? So having like designated funding for WiO will be great, and in the same way, having someone designated to hold the club accountable as well, right? Like you receive funding, then it's like, okay, what are the milestones? What is the timeline? What did you do? So I think something like that will help the college and help the students.
Awesome, great suggestions. Charlotte had a question in the chat as well, which is what would you all like to see included in Prism Week next year? So if Kira, you'd like to answer first.
Oh gosh, well, first of all, I hope that we can have more in-person connection next year. But I do think the hybrid has been really great in that you've been able to bring in, sorry, these new headphones are driving me crazy. So you can bring in, these two lovely individuals for sure. That might not have happened if it was all in person. What could be added? I guess it would be really nice to see, I'm just going to harp on the faculty thing again. We saw a lot of talks, like technical talks, which I thought were great. But there are faculty who do DEI work, and it would have been interesting to hear them, talk more like that. And I also just think open forums where people are able to share their experiences in a moderated way and have that kind of discussion is nice. That was kind of vague, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Liliana?
Well, I'm not a student, so I don't know what I would like to see. But if you guys want something related to industry or alumni, I mean, just feel free to reach out. I think pretty much every alumni from WiO would be fine with coming and giving you a talk or workshop. So there are so many opportunities. So it's up to the students.
Great. Emily?
Yeah, I'd like to swing big and say I'd like to see a new tenured or not tenured, but the new grants for all the professors or that are coming up. I'd like to see the new hire hopefully participate and be like a supported. I want to see a lot of diversities in these new hires that are coming. So I want to see them as a speaker. We'll go with that. I'm not sure. You guys have had some great events planned this year. It's been really awesome to see your whole agenda.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I agree. It has been really awesome to see all the events that have been planned. And even though it's hard and we're all struggling with burnout, and there's been a lot of restrictions placed on what can and can't happen, the WiO board has done a really good job of maintaining a very steady rate of events and making sure people feel included despite the general sense of having to feel a little restricted in our inclusion or our social inclusion of being in person. What is one thing that you missed most about WiO? Some of you have already kind of answered this question, but I would like to hear from everyone. And then to pair with that, what is the thing you missed the least about your time as the WiO president? We'll go with Liliana first.
I was thinking still, the things that I miss the most, we used to have these coffee tea breaks. So we would bring teas and cookies and just chat and ramble about anything optics related. It was so fun. I miss those things. I don't miss. I don't miss being a grad student. I'll just be honest. I didn't sleep much. It's blurry sometimes, to be honest. I can't believe I spent, I don't know, 16 hours working. I don't miss that. It's nothing to do with WiO though. It's just gonna be a grad student.
I think most of us can relate to that. Kira?
Yeah, so I definitely, well, I'm still here, so I don't miss WiO because I still, around. But for my time on board, I think, yeah, I missed the before and after meetings when you inevitably ended up hanging out and just chatting and having that time, with your community that was structured in. That was always like a highlight of my week. I don't miss how tired and stressed I was all the time. Because it is, I think it's a 0.25, sometimes more job. And you're trying to do research and potentially TA and take classes, and now you're going to do WiO leadership. That was not fun. And I don't miss that.
And Emily?
Yeah, my joke answer for what I miss the most is about WiO is brunch. If you guys all remember how much I advocate for brunch. So yeah, I think the camaraderie of just everyone and having something on the calendar to look forward to of, oh, there's a WiO meeting, that means we get to have tea and we'll plan some other things too. Like that was always great. The things I think I missed least about WiO, Liliana and Kira have definitely already talked about this, of that sort of like the burden of service. Everyone's always, we can get volunteers, everyone's really excited about certain ideas, and then when it comes down to actually doing the work, it's you and a handful maybe. And there was just, it really felt like an uphill battle a lot of times, particularly trying to convince the college that things were worth investing in, or just constantly having to do that was exhausting. And I felt like we would do a lot of work, and we would get awards from other, other groups, and I never felt like we got recognition in the college for all of that work. So that was exhausting.
Yeah, it sounds like there needs to be somewhat of a culture change in the college to really recognize the importance and the necessity of having WiO around. So with that in mind, how do you think WiO can be a force to change the culture of the college? And what sort of things do you think WiO can do in the near future to enact that change in the culture of the college? Go with Liliana first.
It's me all the time first. Let me think about it. So I must say, I think things have improved from I'm outside, so I don't have visibility of what's going on right now. But I do hear from WiO, from professors. When I talk to, I'm been in a couple meetings with professors, and they do mention WiO. So I don't think the perspective is changing, but it's hard to say as an external person right now if things have changed and what needs to be done, to be honest. As a student, you have a limited power, but I think the best way is always open communication. Have a one-on-one with head leaders is important. It takes time, obviously. There are some cultural things that you cannot change overnight, and it might take several generations of students to change things. But who knows? New people is being hired, fresher energy. Things can change. So when people join, the new people join, just start talking to them right away. I think that's the best way to get people involved when they join.
Great, thank you. And Liliana, I just want to apologize. Your box right on the screen is right next to me, so I think that's why I keep choosing you first, because I clearly have forgotten who I chose first in the last question. So I'll stop doing that, but I just wanted to apologize for that. So Emily.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the ways is I think the strongest thing that I keep coming back to is in this hiring of all of these new professors. I think if WiO can continue to apply the pressure that we're not like this has to be, that's the thing that's going to affect the culture of the college 20 years from now. You know, that like I think it can't be understated just how important that is. And so one thing that I do know is that there were some several years back they were doing like search committees, and those search committees would also, when they were interviewing professors, have on their agenda certain times to meet with student groups. So myself and I'm not sure if this was the time overlap with you, Liliana, or maybe some other people. A handful of us would actually talk with that candidate, and they would have a lunch for us. And I could always tell who was going to take that sort of thing seriously and was actually interested in the life of the students and who wasn't. So we would provide that feedback to the college. I have no idea if that feedback was listened to, but I think it's something that to encourage having that on these search committees. It shouldn't be WiO's job to pick those committees or to have any sort of, you know, we're not the ones going out finding these candidates. That's not our job or WiO's job. Or the RISE initiative. It's not our, it's the college's burden that they need to rise to meet that. So if we can apply the pressure and say, hey, this is something really important to us, I think that's where maybe WiO can have some sort of leverage there.
Great insight, thank you. Kira?
Yeah, so I definitely think the pressure, again, it's frustrating to me because, again, I don't think that this should be students' job, but it just is the way it turns out. And, you know, I think there has been movement over time. You know, it is frustrating. Like Liliana and I and Charlotte had a meeting, gosh, it was like 4.5 years ago with administration, and to hear some of these things come up over and over again, like, oh, this is a new surprise. Like, no, we've been telling you this for a long time. But eventually things start to move. So it is a useful tool. And I think the other thing that WiO can be just kind of amazingly effective at is that community aspect. So connecting people with one another. And just making sure that everyone feels like optics is a place, like there's a place in optics where they feel comfortable and like they belong. And it can be really simple things like tea hours. Did he open? All right. And whatnot. So yeah, small things where people are able to come together and connect, I think, are very important.
Wonderful, thank you all very much for answering that question. We had a few comments in the chat as well. I don't know if there were any questions. There was one question in there regarding the reduced attendance at community speaker events and just the noticeable decrease in students and faculty members engaged in social events. And to my mind, part of that is just we're still in a pandemic. People don't necessarily feel comfortable being around other people, and people don't really like wearing masks all the time in general. So that can make it hard for them to want to go out to these events, or I don't know, that's just my 2 cents. if you want to comment on that, you can. That's more of a SOC-focused question than a WiO-focused question. But there was a follow-up to that that was a comment more that was, would it be nice, or sorry, it would be nice to have a social event with students who graduated and who are already in the workforce. And this person said that you're doing great. So, but yeah, just wanted to voice those comments in the chat as well. Again, if you do have any questions, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just jumping in on the first thing about participation. I've also noticed this, and definitely part of it is the pandemic, but it is across like SOC, WiO, everything. Participation's been low, and while I think definitely pandemic is part of it, I also think it's a social impact that the pandemic has had that even once things return to quote unquote normal is going to remain. Like I worry especially about like first and second year students in both the undergrad and grad program about how they were able to connect with their classmates and kind of form that community when so much of it was happening virtually. And, you know, I have seen a lot of like beautiful friend groups, and there's the Discord. So there are like ways that people are connecting, but I think there's a disconnect that's probably going to take years and years to kind of bridge back. And I don't have a solution for that. And I think it's going to be a challenge for the student groups moving forward. I acknowledge that's there, and it's a complex issue.
Yeah, does anybody else want to comment on that as well?
I mean, it's a global issue, right? We just have a global pandemic, and what it did to, in terms of social and emotional distress to people, is intense. And I can speak personally. 2 years of working from home is very intense. I went back home to Mexico a couple of weeks ago, and over there, social distance is not really a thing. So when I went there, I was so overwhelmed, and everybody's like, "What's wrong with you, Liliana?" I was like, "Oh, I haven't really talked to too many people in the same room for a long time," and it's like I was in another planet. So definitely it's a thing that will affect years to come. It's not a WiO problem, it's not a problem, it's a global issue. What it did to the mental state of people. So don't hurt yourself with like, oh, people is not coming, I don't know why. It's just a global problem. So
Emily, do you have anything you wanted to add, or you good?
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. Yeah, it's been a traumatic couple of years. So yeah, I hope that in the future, I'm optimistic, but well, yeah, we'll see. I think if we come up with any great ideas, we'd love to see. You know, that's great. I'd love to see that.
Great, thank you for your insight on that. How do each of you hope to see the goals of WiO evolve with a new generation taking the mantle? Start with Kira.
Sure. So one thing that I would really like to see evolve, and I kind of alluded to this before, is that it's doesn't feel so like a survival thing what WiO is doing. Like I feel when I was on the board, I felt very much like if I don't do this work, no one will. And that's a lot of pressure. And so it was always trying to just keep my head above water and, you know, reach out to students and make sure things were going okay. And I think getting out of that space too, once, you know, and there's been a lot of positive change, I think, in leadership, and like we heard at the town hall yesterday, there are things that are being done. And my hope for WiO is as that continues to improve, that focus on things like outreach, more targeted outreach can become more of a priority. And I guess the quote unquote fun things and the professional development, I hope that can be, everyone will have more bandwidth to do those kinds of things once the survival aspects of trying to make people feel like they belong in the college is a little less acutely painful.
Yeah, thank you, Kira. Liliana?
So can you repeat again the question? I want to make sure that I got everything.
Yeah, so how do you hope to see the goals of WiO evolve?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's already evolving. Like since the moment I graduate, when I get a news from WiO, it's so impactful, and relevant that it just blows my mind, to be honest. Like, I remember reading a proposal about Black Lives Matter, I think 2 years ago, and it's an issue that I don't think it was even touched before in such a, I don't want to say aggressive, but such direct way. And it was so mind-blowing when I shared with peers and like, oh, well, look what WiO, my group in optical sciences, is doing. And at work, people was really impressed when I shared this at work. So I think it's evolving already. Like, to be honest, like I feel already old generation when I see things coming out from WiO. And I was like, wow, like these things were not even discussed publicly before. So I think it's already changing. So I'm hoping to see new things and things that probably I wouldn't even haven't think about it, because for people, older people, things that were not an issue, now they're an issue. And it's just, everybody needs to grow up, right? We grow up, we would grow up. So I can tell you, for my point of view, we is already evolving in a direction which is beyond my mind.
Great, thank you, Emily.
Yeah, Liliana, I've seen the same sort of thing. I feel like over the time that I was involved, it started with just sort of a small group filling in the gaps and almost on that survival mode that Kira was talking about. And it sort of grew until, okay, well, there's not this university-wide we want to sort of band together with other women in STEM groups, and that sort of grew. And then now that's WISC and WISE, and then I've seen sort of the focus shift back to the culture of the college. And I think one thing I've just been so happy to see that I hope continues, and I'm sure is continuing, is the broadening of the support of WiO from, not that it wasn't supportive before, but more explicitly supporting diversity at large, not just gender diversity. And so this was something that we actually discussed. I'm not sure how many people know this, but we discussed changing the name of WiO back in like 2017. I think particularly after a particular election, and because we wanted to advocate and champion for everybody, and we're really concerned that there were a lot of colleagues that would feel disenfranchised, and also too that the name Women in Optics maybe wasn't inclusive of that. And I've just been so happy to see with the start of Prism Week and all of the great initiatives that everyone since has been working on it. I think that direction of those goals, yeah, it's great, and I hope it continues.
Awesome, thank you. All really, really useful insights, and we really appreciate all that you have for this new generation as we go forward. And I'm sure Clarissa appreciates hearing what you all have said. It sounds like a glowing review so far, so that's encouraging, but keep pushing to be better. But this is not just the job of WiOs alone, and the next question kind of peers into that. How do you think members of the college from various backgrounds can practice allyship to assist in WiO's mission? Start with Liliana.
Wait, I have the questions here, right? So do you say that?
Yeah, how can members of the college from various backgrounds practice allyship to assist in WiO's mission?
Allyship. So yeah, that's a tricky question. It's like what Emily was saying. I remember when that WiO was trying to change the name to make it more inclusive, because it's when you have the title woman in a club, it's right away it might feel a little bit non-inclusive. So I think it's important to realize and communicate that it's not just about women, right? It's just a group of students championing for not just women's right, but other identities, other diverse groups. So how to increase the allyship is, I think, the best way, because we are such a small community, is communication 101. Sometimes when you talk to students that are different than you realize that, or not students, people, you realize that you have more things in common. So bringing an allyship, it takes a longer time if you do 101, but it might be a stronger bond. So like you bring a friend of you and like, oh, look, we're doing this in women's in optics, but it's not just about women, it's about changing culture in college or things like that. And it might take longer, but it's probably a strongest bonding system than just disseminating the information, because sometimes you see just see the title. I remember I have friends of mine who will just see the title "Women in Optics" in the email, and they just wouldn't open because they thought, oh, it's just for women. And then after talking to them, no, look, it's about a hike or it's about a brunch. I'm like, oh, okay. So having one-on-one communication is important among students.
Kira?
Yeah, I totally agree with Liliana. I think the best thing anyone can do is show up to events and interact with like the other attendees. So, I mean, of course, if you want to get involved volunteering like you are right now, Trent, and helping run something, that's always great. But I really just think engaging with what the club is doing is the best thing anyone could do, because also you might learn something, and maybe you're a faculty member and you learn that there's something you're doing in your classroom that might be affecting students negatively that you didn't know before. As a student, maybe you learn some way that you could be more helpful to your friend, just by learning where people are coming from and what their needs are. So I think it's the easiest thing, and it's the most powerful thing. And yeah, I think that's just ground zero, best thing to do.
Great. Emily?
Yeah, to build off that, I heard the saying today that inclusion starts with I. So I think it's a really simple thing, as in like me, right? So I think it's a simple thing where you can just attend events or pass it along to people, just talk about it. I think that really goes a long way, because it'll open your perspectives a little bit, maybe to hear from different people's their backgrounds. I also want to share something that one of our previous keynote speakers mentioned. We asked sort of the same question of, well, how do we get other people involved, and how can people be good allies? And what she said was, check your CC list. So I mean that both like literally and more broadly. So literally, when you're having email conversations, do I have the right people on here? Am I missing people? Is there someone that I could help elevate their voice in some way? Is there someone I can pull in the room? And when you're in other rooms or making decisions in the room too, like, who's around you? Are you the right person for that? Do you have other expertise? Can you bring other people background? If you are like in a leadership role, are you actually speaking for other people? Do you know that? Have you talked to them? Who else is in that room? So just check and see where we all have blind spots, right? That is human nature. So I think I think that advice of really just checking who's involved, who's on these CC lists. That's it. If you make an intentional effort to that, that's a great way to be an ally, just by recognizing that and just by making an effort and interacting. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. It's good to hear that volunteering is one good step, but that's a lot of other really great advice. And I'm glad this is being recorded so we can share this with people who are curious. Like, how can I help? How can I be an ally? Well, we can point them to this. Say, look, this is a great example of how you can be an ally. There's all these awesome ways that you can get started. We have one final pre-prepared question, but again, to the attendees, if you have a question that you'd like to have the panelists answer, please feel free to enter it in the chat, or we'll have some time for open questions here at the very end, and you can unmute yourselves. But our last pre-prepared question is, could you please describe your vision for what WiO will look like 10 years from now? Well, that's a long ways out, but we're shooting for the moon. What will it look like 10 years from now? We'll start with Emily.
Yeah, so I hope 10 years from now, I hope this would be very, very ambitious to be past the awareness level. I think a lot of times we would spend so much time, people would say, well, I don't know what WiO is doing. So that's why, we started the WiO Weekly. Like, I'm not going to let you not know what's going on, So I hope 10 years from now, we're sort of past that. Maybe I hope also too we've gone a little bit past the survival mode. I don't want future WiO board members to have to sort of feel like that. I hope there's a structure in place. I hope it's consistently supported by an institutional background, like support there, that there's not any sort of there shouldn't be any question about Where's this funding going to come from? Are we going to have this grant? I think those sort of things would be great 10 years from now. I think one thing we didn't touch on was obstacles that we faced. The first year for me, we did not have a good relationship with SOC. I'm very grateful that I think that sort of has really evolved. And I know there's been such close collaboration with SOC, and I'm really grateful for that. Early days, that was at least early days in my view. I have a limited view, of course. That was not the case. And I think that changed when we were very vocal about that. But we needed to have an institutional support from that, and I don't think we had that. And I hope that I hope that's growing, and I hope that continues in 10 years. And I think lastly, I hope we're celebrating the 12th annual Prism Week. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, thank you, Kira.
Yeah, so definitely, if nothing else, just getting out of that kind of survival mode that we keep going back to, it would be great. And I think to touch on what Emily was saying about SOC and WiO is, in my mind, if the culture of OpsTix was just completely like beautiful and wonderful and perfect, which will obviously never be the case because nothing's perfect, those two, like the two orgs would be completely parallel, right? And WiO exists because the student org that existed at the time, as it was not supporting students who were underrepresented and basically kind of being excluded from the college community. And so in the future, I don't know, I see WiO and SOC becoming more and more collaborative, with WiO really taking on, a lot of the outreach and advocacy kind of work. But seeing that sort of separation not completely go away, but just continue to become collaborative, because I think it is a really good sign of, if supporting the whole student body includes supporting students of all identities and from all communities, then that's the goal, right? So that would be my hope for 10 years.
Juliana?
Okay, so in 10 years, I would like to know that WiO is in a good shape and has that institutional support, like Emily said. So WiO it doesn't feel like a burden, but a place where students can grow up their skills and their career. So in 10 years, I'm gonna be a manager, probably. And I'm gonna come into the current WiO board. I'm like, hey guys, we have this funding or this scholarship, and let's do this happen in a very smooth way. And so students develop their career skills, their networking, they know each other, but it doesn't feel like a burden, it's okay to fight some battles, but it shouldn't be on the students. It should be more about the students growing up, surviving their careers, and just maximizing that. Not so much about the fighting battles, and it's always good to strive for change. It's always, that should be the goal, but that shouldn't be the main mission of WiO, but rather building that community to make your career better. Because at the end of the day, you are all the students, and you are here for a reason, which is to obtain to have a career in optics. So I think that should be the best thing, to have the strongest optics scientists and engineers, and that they have that in their curriculum.
Wonderful, thank you for that input as well. It's very positive outlook, and I'm really happy to see that there's a bright future ahead of WiO. Daewoo actually just put a great question in the chat, and I'll read it back so you can answer it as well. This is probably the last question we have time for. You're also welcome, Daewoo, if you want to unmute and ask it, you're welcome to.
Oh, sure. Thank you very much. By the way, I really want to thank all of you, because I really think WiO is clearly making really strong and positive impact to our community. I know WiO, what it stands for. That means a lot, because the effort and the spirit is there, and many of us at our college recognize it. So Big thanks to you all, especially the leadership people. I think you achieved something really valuable for our community. But then if it's a good thing, and I think diversity really means diversity of the locations. If we talk about diversity only at our own college, it's irony because we are not really diverse in that sense. I think this kind of thing must be beyond our own college in Tucson or Wyand College. So I want to hear if you have any plan or any vision to reach out to other colleges or even beyond US. There are maybe colleges in Africa, colleges in Asia, Europe. There are many other colleges with a diverse background, and maybe that will be very exciting to have some membership at those places. I'm just curious about the plan. And I think Zoom environment may really enable it. They may join this kind of meeting from all over the place in the world. Thank you.
Great. Does anybody have anything they want to contribute? It can be anyone on the panel or Clarissa or whoever else.
Yeah, I guess I can just hop in real quick because none of us three know the current plan because none of us are on the board anymore. But I do think that the vision for being able to reach out beyond the college is so important, and WiO has historically done things like that. So going to events like the Conference for Undergraduate Women in Physics to try to get people excited about optics before graduate school so that they decide to pursue it, and going to high schools, right? And it really comes down to, I think, time and involvement. But I totally agree that Zoom is an amazing way to make connections globally and do outreach, and definitely something that is exciting. And I know Emily is like the outreach queen of all time, so I don't know if you have any reflections, but it's definitely something that is important.
Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I would just add that maybe this is a time that you could leverage the connection with like the professional networking societies with Optica and SBIE. That's a good opportunity. They already have at those various conferences. There's usually some sort of EDI event. So partnering with those is a great way to have that be more global reach. Yeah, I think it's everything that we said, and I think if Clarissa and the existing board, I think they have the more of the eye on the future since I've been out of the leadership for a while now. But yeah, that's sort of what a lot of things that came up during the discussion, I think would be ways that you could extend the impact of WiO outside of just the college. And outreach, yeah, don't get me started. We'll be here all night.
Great, thank you, Liliana.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And also there are like other three main colleges in optics. So yeah, and I don't know that never occurred to us before, but that could be a really good strategy, opening networking for other colleges, for other student clubs. That would be really interesting.
Just to talk one last thing on, so launching your career, which is that not WISE takes it now. They actually started doing kind of a dual event that's bilingual, where half of the events are in Spanish and they're working with a university in Mexico. And opportunities like that, potentially with Prism Week, I think there's a good model for doing that. And I think the more we can bring in bilingual events to help definitely reach the global community in big ways. I do know Clarissa, I think, is organizing the filming of lab tours in students' native languages to be put on the website. So that's another, sorry, I remember her telling me that idea. So there is stuff happening, but lots of cool opportunities.
Awesome, sounds very exciting. We are basically we're definitely out of time. We're over the hour now, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. They'll be included in the recording, so the panelists and others who have the recording link can see them afterwards. But if any of the panelists have any last comments they want to include before we adjourn, please speak now or forever hold your peace. And
thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Honored to be included. I love seeing you all again. Yeah, and way to go to everyone doing the work now. You guys are really killing it.
Yeah, I agree with Emily. Thank you so much, guys, for inviting us. This was really good, and thank you for pushing the boundaries and cultural change in the college.
It's great. Thank you all for being here and for taking time out of your day and for really helping us to understand from each of your perspective what WiO is, what it was, and what it's to become, and just how we can do a better job of supporting WiO as well. So with that, we'll adjourn. We'll close the meeting, and thank you all for being here. It's been my pleasure.